Warning! Warning! There's a conspiracy afoot. They're trying to change all of your beloved children's literature so it conforms to woke agendas, making everything all politically correct. Okay, so, for the record, I don't normally use the word woke. It's almost inevitably being used wrong, and it's almost inevitably being used as the start of some stupid argument that doesn't benefit anyone. But this was the headline I was being greeted with when I dropped into the social media flow some days ago. Yes, I know that by now it is somewhat old news, but actually I don't just drop everything to post videos for attention. Yet. So here's the scoop. Slightly twisted children's author Roald Dahl, who you might know from the likes of Matilda, or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, or James and the Giant Peach, I don't know why I did that, was announced to be receiving some updates in the latest edition of his books. In general, the very many little tweaks that were being reported to be made to these books were along the lines of changing descriptions that were perhaps less than kind or potentially offensive. Although there was the interesting case of the main character of Matilda, instead of reading the rather colonially associated Rudyard Kipling, having now moved her allegiances to Jane Austen. Not a popular choice with waistcoat wearers perhaps, but otherwise, you go girl. Now, I speak here as a writer rather than the kind of person who says woke a lot, which I've already established I'm not, and who is mostly worried about all the mean things they can no longer just say. I actually don't think that changing these books is the right thing to do. Now, the main argument that I've seen put forward against this viewpoint is that Dahl himself was known to have changed the text of his books in his lifetime, either to bring things more in line with what was appropriate to say, or, to fix up things that were never appropriate to say. I'm onto you, Mr. Dahl. And in the case of the examples of this I've seen, which are mostly to do with the portrayal of the Oompa Loompas in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, who originally espoused a number of rather offensive native tribe stereotypes, I say good for him if he was willing to make those changes to ensure that his books would be more correctly understood or more likely to make money, Good for you, bro. Over the very many years I spent working on my debut novel, Hearts of Salt, buy it, bitches. I ended up making a lot of very small changes to the way I'd originally written the text, because often what I'd written was true to the characters and who they were and where they were at the time, but the potential hurt and misunderstanding that would have come from maintaining that wording, it was just petty to cling to, so I didn't. And now that I've published the book, yay! Well, if I came to realise that there was something else that I'd put in there that was actually not as kind as I thought, maybe I would change it. I mean, it all depends on the circumstances, of course. No matter what you write, what obscure phrasing you use, there will be some person who will have an association with it that you cannot possibly predict, and who might feel pain as a result of the words that you use. And you can't protect against that. Nor should you be trying to write characters who are exclusively good and who never say something wrong or offensive. But you have to weigh it up. A few words in the context of 50, 100,000, more words, it's not really going to have an impact on the artistic merit of the work. I'd probably make a note about the change if any substantial number of people had read it. But no, I don't believe that, even in the case of my precious babies, that every single word I've written is sacred just as I've written it originally. But in these cases, we're talking about the original author spearheading or at least approving these changes. In the case of Roald Dahl now, it's other people who are making these choices on behalf of the author who is now deceased. But we'll get back to that in a bit. The question I'd like to take on first is this. At what point does alteration of an already released or published piece of art amount to vandalism? Ooh. Now here's another proposed change to the Roald Dahl books that's a little bit more meaty than just removing a few questionable words. Now if you just excuse me while I read exactly off my screen. So we have the original text which says, but not many years ago, a law was passed that made it illegal to bring any tortoises into the country. And then we have the revised text which reads, but Many years ago, a law was passed that made it illegal to bring any tortoises into the UK. I should just read directly off my screen all the time rather than trying to talk off the cuff, right? Now, I might just not be smart enough to see the potential harm in the ambiguity of the location or time frame in the original text. But it seems to me that this is a change designed not to protect anyone from emotional harm, but to make the meaning of the text a little more clearly understood, but which actually has the potential to confuse some readers if you assume that the text is written from the perspective of when it was originally published. So the interesting thing here is that the meaning of the text has actually been changed. Round ball? Squash ball? I don't know why I did that either. Now, I think it's very unlikely that very many people are going to be that much affected by the accuracy of the reporting on the 1984 tortoise ban. But let's look to an example of this kind of modification that is perhaps more evocative of the potential issues here. And that is, you've all heard of it, George Lucas's Star Wars series. The creator himself has made a number of changes to the original movies since their release. These changes have involved the use of computer graphics where puppets were originally used and the subtle shifting of events in certain critical scenes, and have generally been received very badly by those who enjoyed the original movies as they were originally released. Furthermore, Lucas, or those operating on his behalf, have actually made it very difficult to access the movies as they were originally presented, which has led some fans to go to tremendous lengths to reverse the changes made in more recent versions of these movies. You should check out the despecialized editions. Just like, we should be celebrating that work along with the pyramids, honestly. George Lucas undoubtedly had the right to choose to make changes to his creative work. And one can even understand his desire to bring his original vision more accurately to his audiences with the advancing of computer technology. But even as I assert his authority over his own work, I do think that he forgot about the duty he owed to the fans he had already gathered through their enthusiasm for the original version. Of course, as a creative, you shouldn't get too caught up in what other people expect of you. That's how we've ended up in this endless spiral of ever more formulaic work being produced at the top of the market. But obviously, the people who enjoy the things you create matter. If they didn't matter, then who on earth would go to any trouble to ensure anybody reads or watches or listens to anything you do? It'd be much easier to just do things for yourself, create what you want to create exactly how you want to create it. And indeed, many creatives, including myself, do go on creating a lot of things just for ourselves that are never meant to be seen by anybody else. Of course, we know that a lot of people do go out there seeking an audience to create for, or trying to market what they've created to an audience. Now that I'm feeling more experienced and confident in my writing, I do a lot of this too. That doesn't have to mean you're selling out. As creatives, as humans, we want the things that we create to matter to somebody who is not ourselves. We want to reach out and communicate with other people through our creative efforts. It's the most beautiful form of communication some of us have, especially those of us who are a little bit awkward and live shut up in our rooms. Not that I know anything about that. Anyway, my point is that it's totally natural. But once you do build that relationship, I think it should matter to you. The fact that you've created something that has made a big difference in the life of someone you've probably never met before should matter. And you should appreciate, among other things, that you have absolutely no way of appreciating the exact way in which your creation has touched somebody else. And for that reason, you should be very careful when you consider making it very difficult for people to access the original form of your work that they perhaps fell in love with. He's got a... Oh, that doesn't look like a hat, does it? Okay, let's pretend. Cut. Oh, wait. I'm the one controlling the... You just don't know what you're playing around with there. If you're taking exception to the idea that it's no longer 100% about what you want to do, well, maybe you're not ready to be sharing your work yet. Hot take? Maybe. But when you think about it, it's just the usual advice that creators get flipped on its head, right? If you're not ready to take critique of your work, then you shouldn't be sharing it. And if you're not ready to hear someone say, will you please, please leave it the Furby alone, then you should probably wait until you're a little more ready to let go, let it stand. Having said all that, I am relatively confident that very few people would be drastically harmed by these proposed changes to Dahl's works. And on the flip side, that a lot of people might find them more comfortable to get into with certain words and phrases removed. It is a slippery slope we're looking down here, and as with many slippery slopes in arguments, I think it's very unlikely that in this case we're going to get to the point where it's a really serious issue. However, I did still think that it was important to acknowledge and comment on this. I think it's far too common these days for the enjoyers of creative works to be treated as just a source of eyeballs and money whose love for a particular piece of entertainment can be manipulated. And I think the way this situation is being played is a big, big example of this. Which I think makes for a very good opening to get back to that point that I unceremoniously dropped earlier, which is... here it is. These changes are not being made by the original author. More specifically, Roald Dahl is deceased, dead, gone, an ex-author. Even more specifically, my point is that these books of his are really freaking old. They have done their dash in the literary world and then some. It's been a spectacular dash, in fact. The estate of Roald Dahl is worth millions upon millions even today. And it's recently been bought by Netflix because one imagines they think they can use it to make even more money. And naturally, the owners of this tremendous cash cow want to protect their investment and make sure that there is absolutely no barrier to it getting in front of as many eyeballs and screen readers and what have you as possible. So that is what's incentivizing these edits, not any desire to be woke or compassionate or whatever you'd like to call it. And even if the vast majority of the proposed changes would actually be kind of positive, I think we should all be very bothered by this sort of surgery being cynically done on classic literature, just to continue making a buck. Not just because of how tacky this situation is, but because it sounds a dire warning for what we have to look forward to in the future of entertainment. A future that, to be honest, we're already living. And for more on that, let's look to the example of the current biggest IP that has ever IP'd. These days, wild as it seems, I have adult friends who were born after the publication date of the first Harry Potter book. Hi guys. That was weird. As a franchise, its maximum hype levels have outlived just about anything you can imagine. Twilight, 50 Shades of Grey, Maze Runner, Hunger Games, Divergent. It's amazing and frankly quite bizarre because the books are not that amazing. The writing is adequate and sometimes quite funny, but it's nothing to write home about when you consider the prose of the likes of Philip Pullman or Diana Wynne-Jones, who have also contributed a great amount to children's literature. The plot is, frankly, kind of mean-spirited compared to the thematically similar but much more inclusive Percy Jackson books. And I mean, that is fine, it's just fiction. But it's frankly interesting to me that this is what apparently took everyone in the world by storm once upon a time. I don't think that it was purely based on what it had to offer compared to other books on the market. Now I know it's trendy to hold negative opinions about Harry Potter now because of J.K. Rowling's recent antics, but I can say with complete confidence that I've been holding these views since before Rowling's only tweets were about how her priority was holding a pen and paper or whatever. Girl, you should have stuck with that. And yet I can't deny that the books and their associated movie world and the subsequent investment put into marketing both of them has a tremendous hold on very many people in our world. Would I like to create something that had that kind of staying power? Absolutely. And yet, even for Rowling, it's been kind of a double-edged wand, I think. Harry Potter fans are often desperately begged to please read another book. And Rowling herself has expressed a desire to move on to other works in her career. But creatively speaking, while she's still better off than most of us who have like 0.5 people paying attention to our work, she is kind of a prisoner of the success of her own franchise. The thing is, everything you could say about Harry Potter, you can say about Roald Dahl's bibliography. The writing is, well, it's fine, but to be honest, a lot of it is iconic for shock value. And it's not necessarily what I want my child to be looking to as classic literature. I hope my wife never sees this video or she's going to dye my hair in my sleep or something. Yikes. The point is that both Harry Potter and the Roald Dahl books are bigger than their original author and that person's desires now. The publishers of the books have a stake in them, and so does everybody involved with the movies and all the other merchandise that has been created to go with the books. There are a lot of people who stand to benefit from both of these franchises continuing to bring in the big bickies. So in light of what's happening right now with the Dahl estate, I think that it is perfectly reasonable to assume that this could be the future for Harry Potter and, for whatever succeeds Harry Potter in the public consciousness if that ever happens. That once the text starts to feel way too antiquated, whatever juggernauts are benefiting financially from it at that time, after Rowling has shuffled off to die atop a hill of being weird to people who aren't bothering her, will do absolutely anything to ensure the continued market share of that IP. And the assertion then, as now, will be that modifying children's books in such a way is a good thing, because it breaks down any barriers that might exist between those books and the children who might read them, who can then do so without requiring any special guidance from the adults around them. I don't think that's a good thing at all. I think that friction in older books should be allowed to remain. And if the text is too antiquated, for these books to be allowed to slip out of the top spots in their true forms, as it were. And for new books, written with more modern sensibilities, to find the space to take over. Further, I think we really need to stop offering free promotion to these books that have big money-making machines behind them, or at least stop pretending that they exist on the same playing field as all the other books. Now, I have the utmost respect for a good classic. I am a reader beyond just being somebody who can and does read when they have to, so I'm equipped to deal with the complexities that these kinds of books offer. There will always be readers who seek out classics from prior eras. These older books have the ability to convey something of the attitudes and time in which they were originally written, as well as something of the character of the original writer. There's a kind of information beyond words in them when they're allowed to remain like this, as snapshots of their earlier time. And without the courtesy of these historical works to remain unedited, unprivileged and unfranchised by big business. Although abridged classics for children were a big source of anxiety in my time too, just ask my mother. Perhaps many of the books that kids enjoy today would not have found a place in the modern market, for better or worse as it may be. What future great works of literature are we going to miss out on? Simply because it's harder to claim a piece of real estate in the human consciousness when the existing players are so effective at maintaining theirs. Don't tell me no, these classics will help to get people reading, because that is obviously not what is happening. Just look at the extreme emotional response from some people at the mere suggestion that they might want to boycott the upcoming Harry Potter game. Now, this is totally aside from any opinions on what anyone should do, because I totally gave up on Harry Potter when she did my girl Luna so dirty. My point is that these hugely franchised IPs are not opening people up to becoming readers. They're creating a space for themselves in the ecosystem and maintaining it, and that's it. So what does create a reader then? Well, I think not everyone is suited to becoming a wide reader, and that's fine. For those who do develop the skill, though, I think it's in large part a social thing. Just like many people end up reading Roald Dahl because of parents or friends who have read Roald Dahl. Young people will be interested in reading a variety of things if those around them they look up to and admire are also themselves reading a variety of things. And if more experienced readers are willing to offer them guidance in tackling more complex works, then they will slowly develop the confidence to seek out these new works for themselves, even if they don't see everyone around them reading that exact book. What is happening when you modify older, still marketable classics to make them even more marketable is the exact opposite of this process. You're not supposed to have a chat with the child before they read about how things were different when a particular book was created, about how people can be unkind without realising it, about how not everything you read should be taken as factual. You're not supposed to decide that maybe a particular book is not a good fit for a particular child at a particular time. The goal is to be able to deploy known quantities into your children's hands or devices and not to have to give it another moment's thought after that. The proposed changes to Dahl's works are not political correctness in action, though maybe they did start with sensitivity readers. They're a cynical attempt to sanitize something that some may rightly decide is not the right thing for their children at present. To keep that product active in the market when the original author is dead and his heirs have already profited in large part from his prior efforts. And you know what? I'm sure that the people who signed off on this are absolutely delighted for you to think that maybe you're fighting against some kind of regressive nonsense when you support this move. In fact, their own actions already show that this has nothing to do with them taking any particular moral stance, but wanting to do whatever they think will maximize their customer base. Because the latest word is that, in response to public backlash, this plan is going to be gone back on to some degree, allowing both the original and modified versions of the books to coexist, with the new versions forming a kind of abridged for children library. Whoever you are, they are going to have a version of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory that does not offend you. And now, if you've been following the news, you have definitely got Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, movies or books, who cares, on the mind again. Maybe you want to go out right now and grab the version that you remember from your childhood while you can still get it. Or go out and refresh your library with new versions that are a little less awkward to read to the children at bedtime. Now, I wouldn't go so far as to say that this has all just been a publicity stunt from beginning to end, but it really makes you think, doesn't it? I personally hate the idea that the future will be big businesses telling us what to read and how it will be configured when we do read it. Surely we do not have to let ourselves be played like this. Don't let nostalgia convince you that the next generation absolutely must discover all the same things that you discovered when you were their age, or that you absolutely must make sure that these books exist on a basic reading level at all costs. If you're an adult, especially one who has regular dealings with children, allow the generations coming up after you to discover their own classics. Don't become a mouthpiece for powerful people who stand to benefit a lot from your support. Or at least, if you truly do want to pass on these super popular IPs, try to add some somewhat more obscure nostalgia to the pile as well. Not just what you remember the best because it still has millions being pumped into its promotion today. Meaningful works of literature will always survive in one form or another, or at least there's no reason they shouldn't so long as there's still someone around to care for them. Those of us who have no horse in the game and who care about good works over money should let what's already had its dash sink or swim on its own original merits now, and actively prioritise the uplifting of new and interesting voices to diversify our children's reading pool. That goes for our inner children too. This is the dream that our new, more online and more connected world was supposed to support. That artists who have something interesting to say can make a big success of themselves at their life's work without being hopelessly blocked in their own lifetime by huge, malignant companies. Are you writing the next great novel then, Pikachu?